subscribe and hit the notification button.
Absolutely. Don't subscribe. Oops.
It's me, Catieosaurus, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we are talking ADHD with a very special guest, my mom. Say hi, Mom.
Hi.
So today, we're going to do something a little bit different on the channel, and we are going to screen my mom for ADHD.
Ooh.
Spoilers, she doesn't have ADHD. Are you concerned that you might have ADHD?
Not really. I think just what I've learned about what you've told me about it and how the brain and body works differently, I don't have those same attributes or whatever. I can tell that I don't do those things.
That's good.
And I don't mean that in a bad way or like I'm better, but it's just I don't.
Well, you think you're better than me?
Surprise! It's me, Catieosaurus from the future. Ooh. So here's the thing. I have a couple of really important announcements, and I didn't want to forget to put them in at the end, so I'm doing it right now. So here they are, rapid fire. Number one, I have a new podcast with understood.org. I'm so excited for it. It's called Sorry I Missed This. It's a podcast about ADHD and how it affects intimacy and communication and relationships. And the very first episode just came out. So please go listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast, wherever you get your listening sounds from. Please go check it out. Number two, if you haven't joined the newsletter for book updates, please do. We just turned in the manuscript for the second round of edits, and so we're waiting to hear back from Simon and Schuster. But we are so excited, and it's happening. There's things happening. Number three, over on Renegade Science Teacher Forrest Valkai's channel, Roll for Initiative has also finally premiered. It was a labor of love and hard work, and we came together and we made something and told an extraordinary story. We have already raised over $5,000 for Doctors Without Borders, so please go check it out. I will link it here below as well. And also I'm moving to Los Angeles, so I might not be around as much for the next couple of weeks because I got a writing gig on a project that I can't tell you about yet, but I am thrilled and excited, and my life is changing. And there are big things going on. And so I'm so excited to take you all for the ride. And also I'm going to have a column in Playboy magazine. I forgot that one. There's a lot going on. I will tell you more about that when I have more details. But yeah, it's summer 2024, summer Catieosaurus. So anyway, go check all that stuff out. Okay, back to the episode. Katie from the past, take it away.
Hey, Mom, what do you know about ADHD?
Well, until fairly recently when you and I talked, not a lot.
Not a lot.
I don't even know if I was aware of it as a kid, what it was, but I think probably when I was maybe high school, college, you hear about it.
Yeah.
And it was like kids who were hyperactive and they needed Ritalin.
Was that it?
That's about it.
So that was like the only
That's about it at the
context.
time. Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is like, what were your attitudes towards ADHD before you knew that I had ADHD? Like, what did you, if you heard that a kid had ADHD, were there like feelings or emotions or like opinions that would come up?
I mean, like not like, oh, they're, tainted or something, not all like that. But I guess I just, like I said, I would kind of go back to where I just understood that it was hyperactive kids who were on Ritalin or something.
Sure.
But it didn't really know a whole lot else about it.
Yeah.
How did it feel after, what was it like for you as a parent when I told you that I got diagnosed?
Well, at first, I kind of felt like somehow, can we stop this? I think maybe one of my first emotions was somehow I let you down, or how could I not know? How could I not see?
Yeah.
Because what I can say of you as a child, you were a good student, you were intelligent, you were like a voracious reader, and you could go through a 700-page Harry Potter book in a day. And I thought, how does that fit ADHD, you didn't have a hyperactivity. I guess I was still learning about that it doesn't necessarily include that. But for a while I had those feelings like, how could I as your mom not know this? Or, and if you had experiences, how come you couldn't tell me? And so I went through kind of that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because like for me, I thought my experience was normal. Like so much of the frustrations that I had like when I was a kid, it wasn't about like, oh, I'm frustrated because I can't do this thing. It was that I just didn't know that it wasn't as hard for everybody else. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have the tools to like name that. You know what I mean? Like you would like get me in trouble a lot for, like having a messy room. Yeah. But like
I feel terrible now.
No, but that's the thing. But it's like but in your minds, keeping a room clean is like a fairly simple task, but in my ADHD brain, there's a lot more that goes into it. And so that was like where a lot of that tension was. So like it wasn't like
that's part of my guilt because I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have, okay, you gotta clean this room, you can't come out or something, I wouldn't have done that if I had realized that was your neural diversion brain.
But you also didn't know about ADHD. Don't blame yourself. Like you only can know what you know. But yeah, like I'm not mad at you, just so you know. So I have a fun activity for us to do today. Okay, so I'm going to give you the Adult ADHD Self-Report Scale, which is called the ASRS-v1.1, and it was developed by the World Health Organization in conjunction with some researchers at Harvard. And it's used generally like when adults are thinking that maybe they have ADHD. This is like the test that they take, right? So I'm going to give you the test. But I'm also going to take it at the same time, and then at the end, we're going to compare our answers. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay. You're going to answer the question below, rating yourself on each of the criteria using the scale on the side of the page. As you answer each question, I'll place an X in the box that best describes how you have felt and conducted yourself over the past 6 months. So we're specifically looking at the window of like the past 6 months or so. Okay. If you have questions or you want to know more about it, ask. Got it?
Got it.
Let's go.
Got it.
Transition. It's the best video I've ever made. Your options are never, rarely, sometimes, often, or very often. Okay? And that's going to be your scale for the whole thing. Okay. How often do you have trouble wrapping up the final details of a project once the challenging parts have been done?
Never.
All right. What about like when you were working?
Well, that's why I would say never, because that was like my job, my profession. I was good, and I got everything organized and wrapped up. And that wasn't a problem. I don't think it is here, but I have a much less challenging life. So, I'm saying?
No, that makes sense. It's interesting that you say that, because like for me, it still shows up like every day. Like if I always have trouble wrapping up the final details. Like if I'm like I've been building built-ins in my living room, they're still not done because I got the hard part done, but I need to like put on the trim and like paint the little thing. It's been like almost 8 months and I still haven't done it because there's just something about the like finalizing those little details, wrapping it up.
Maybe it's like it doesn't matter. It's the little stuff. You got the hard stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So who cares about the little stuff?
Yeah, like the big thing is the big thing, and then the little stuff is like, oh. And so, but it drives Chris crazy because he's like, can you please finish a project before you go into the next project? But in my head, that project's done because I did the big hard part, just all those shitty little things. So but that's been my experience my whole life. Still hilarious for me to like hear people just like be like, no, absolutely, I never struggle with that because I've struggled with that every day of my life, and it's just so weird. Like it's not weird, but it's just like a different experience. You know what I mean? How often do you have difficulty getting things in order when you have to do a task that requires organization?
I don't ever. I guess never. I guess I don't have a trouble with that. I'm sort of good at organizing.
Are you?
Yes.
I'm very bad at it.
Yes.
So it's okay. You know that that difficulty getting things in order, did you know that that's part of executive function?
You may have recently told me that, but I didn't know that before.
Do you know what executive function is?
Like putting things in the most important order?
That's part of it. So when I talk about executive functioning are the things that your brain does to get through the day.
Oh, okay.
And depending on who you ask, because there's different ways that it's categorized,
Yeah.
but the basic ones are like working memory, emotional regulation, task organization, task prioritization, self-regulation, like that kind of stuff. So it's sort of that like, what am I doing? How am I getting through my day? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so task organization can be really difficult for a lot of people with ADHD. Mm-hmm. So like if I'm baking cookies, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make chocolate chip cookies. Mm-hmm. I'll get out, the flour and the sugar and whatever, mm-hmm. but then I might forget to get the chocolate chips. And then, okay, I have to, or if, I'm putting together a shelf, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start here and go to this next one and go to this next one. But, I forgot the screwdriver, so now I have to go. So setting up and transitioning from task to tasks can be really difficult. Make sense? How often do you have problems remembering appointments or obligations?
Very rarely, if at all.
When you have a task that requires a lot of thought, how often do you avoid or delay getting started?
That depends on if there's like a good movie on TV, you know? I mean, in general, no.
What is the movie that if it comes on the TV, you're not getting anything done for the rest of the day?
Ooh, could be 3 of them.
Okay.
While You're Sleeping, Return to Me, and the Guernsey literary pile, potato peel pie, whatever style movie. I like romantic comedies and romantic dramas.
Also, Mom is currently looking for a boyfriend, so...
Shut up, I am not.
I'm interested to see how you answer this one. How often do you fidget or squirm with your hands or feet when you have to sit down for a long time?
Not at all, except that now I do because my back hurts.
Okay. So it's like a pain thing.
Yeah, it's a pain thing.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. How often do you feel overly active and compelled to do things like you were driven by a motor?
Never.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. My phone went off. Boop, 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 boop. I have that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot. It's like, I have to do this thing right now, and it is the only thing I can focus on doing. And if I don't do it, then like I get super like distracted,
Yeah.
But no, and it's like it's really frustrating. It's a really frustrating way to be. This video is actually a really good example because I had this idea. I was like, I really want to make this video. I'm supposed to be working on my book edits. I'm not right now. We're doing this instead. But because I was like, I really want to do this video, that was all I could think about. That was all I could focus on. So I had like 3 or 4 hours today where I could have been working on the book, but instead I was just like, we should do that video. And it's like, that's so frustrating because you just get latched onto this thing.
Yeah.
How often do you make careless mistakes when you have to work on a boring or difficult project?
I don't know that I would say I do that.
How often do you have difficulty keeping your attention when you are doing boring or repetitive work?
Maybe I'd say rarely.
Okay.
I don't know, but no.
How often do you have difficulty concentrating on what people say to you, even when they are speaking to you directly?
Not at all.
How often do you misplace or have difficulty finding things at home or at work?
Rarely. I won't say never. There's a couple times I couldn't remember where I placed like last year's Christmas presents that I bought early or something like that.
How often are you distracted by activities or noise around you?
Probably rarely, I guess.
How often do you leave your seat in meetings or in other situations in which you are expected to stay seated?
Oh, never.
Never?
No.
Not a rebel?
No.
No.
I'm not a rebel in that way.
How often do you feel restless or fidgety?
Probably rarely. I won't say never, but
Okay.
I can't think of any times.
How often do you have difficulty unwinding and relaxing when you have time to yourself?
Maybe rarely.
Okay.
Sometimes, I guess that happens once in a while.
Okay. How often do you find yourself talking too much when you are in social situations?
And sometimes I might think I was talking too long, like somebody calls me on the phone and asks me how am I doing, what's up, and so then I'm talking a lot, and then it's like, I kind of monopolized. I didn't ask them how they are and their family. So, I mean, I guess...
But it's good that you're self-aware of that.
Yeah.
Because it's something you're working on.
I mean, I guess rarely to sometimes, somewhere in there,
Okay.
I don't know.
When you're in a conversation, how often do you find yourself finishing the sentences of the people you are talking to before they can finish it themselves?
Oh, I don't think I ever do that. I guess I would say rare because there might be some time I don't remember I did it. But
Okay. How often do you have difficulty waiting your turn in situations when turn taking is required?
never.
Okay. How often do you interrupt others when they are busy?
Can't say never. I guess rarely.
So here's my question. So I've already taken mine. I did mine. I'm going to show you my answers in a second. Having listened to all of these questions, do you feel like you have a better understanding of what it's like to have ADHD?
If an ADHD person answered that and said all the time, most of the time, whatever things, I would say, well, that's pretty different from the way I look or act or think or whatever and organize. And especially like when I think of it related to you, I wouldn't have even answered that way about you because I didn't see those things in about you. I remember when you were doing Frenzy Players Theater and you were also there, like you organized the chart with a schedule and took care of bills and did all that besides acting in it and everything. And I thought, wow, you really can multitask and handle a million things. And like I mentioned earlier, you can sit and read a book for hours and read the whole thing or something like that, or you play piano for 2 hours. I wouldn't have, if somebody said, answer those for your daughter, what you think, I wouldn't have answered the other end of the spectrum, but I have a feeling that you probably are, just from even our conversation.
So that's really interesting because do you know what hyperfixation is?
I think you told me a little bit that when I mentioned that one to you time about reading a book, and you said you would focus on something you really like and you could keep attention on that for a long time.
Yeah, so in ADHD, there's this thing called hyperfocus. And so hyperfocus is basically the idea, exactly what you said. It's like, I'm really into playing piano right now. So as I'm getting invested in playing the piano, I'm going to lose all sense of time. I'm going to lose all sense of like what's going on around me. And I'm just going to hyperfocus on playing the piano. And then I'm going to look up and, it's been 2 hours. But one of the problems is that a lot of people from the outside, that just looks like, well, you can sit there and play piano for 2 hours. Why can't you go clean your room?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think that's what I did with you.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that you also talked about was hyperactivity. Hyperactivity doesn't have to be bouncing off the walls, screwing around in class. That's often what it's like presented at when we're talking about ADHD, especially in like young kids, especially young boys. But for a lot of women with ADHD, that hyperactivity is all internal. So that hyperactivity shows up as like impulse shopping or spending or staying up really late or racing thoughts or not being able to like go to bed or like that kind of stuff. And so that the hyperactivity portion a lot of times just because young girls are socialized to sort of sit still and behave and that kind of stuff. It's harder for us to sort of like physically manifest those symptoms. And so it's another one of the reasons why ADHD gets missed so much in young women because of those sort of social expectations that we behave and we have our life together. Another big symptom of ADHD is overcommitting and overextending yourself because that dopamine rush of like, oh, I'm so busy and I'm so stressed and I have to handle all this stuff. A lot of times that can actually be an indicator that somebody has ADHD. Because that's what they're doing, if they're using that manufactured stress of taking on too much stuff.
So you think that was happening with you with Prenzy?
Oh yeah, so I mean, I loved it. I loved doing Prenzy. Like Prenzy was amazing. Yeah. But it also was a thing where I was directing and I was lighting designing and I was costuming and I was stage managing and acting and all of that stuff. And a lot of that was because one, I have a really hard time saying no. But then two, it's also it was another way to sort of fill my time and fill my schedule. Yeah. So I didn't have to think about everything else that was going on. Yeah. I'm going to show you my results. Ready?
Okay.
Boom.
Oh my. Very often. Off and on, only two.
Two that I put often are, how often are you distracted by activities or noise around you? And how often do you leave your seat to stay in meetings or other situations in which you're expected to stay seated? A really hard thing about having ADHD is that a lot of times there is that social pressure. Like you have to sit still, you have to behave in church, like that kind of thing. Yeah. And so it can be really frustrating when you know. But the thing is that if you're in that situation where it's like, I have to sit still, I'm not focused on anything that's happening. If you ask me later, like, what did we talk about in the meeting? I'm like, I couldn't tell you, because the only thing that I'm focused on is sitting still and making sure that I look like I'm paying attention. You can either look like you're paying attention or pay attention, and often those two things look very different in people with ADHD.
Yeah. Okay.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. One of us has ADHD. The other one doesn't. The other one doesn't. So what do you think, Mom? Do you think that you understand ADHD a little bit better?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me about what it's like to live with ADHD?
Do you always realize or know when you're having, I don't want to call it an episode, but do you realize, like, when you're I don't know, when you're having a moment, like when you're not paying attention but you're doodling to act like you're paying attention? Are you always aware that you're doing that?
That's a really good question. I'm always hyper aware of how I am perceived. I'm always cognizant of, am I talking too much? Have I asked them enough questions about themselves? Do I look like I'm paying attention? Am I making enough eye contact?
Yeah.
Like, am I making not enough eye contact? Do I need to, like, hold more still? Like, that is the kind of, like, inner monologue that I'm having. Or I'm paying attention. And if I'm paying attention, then my focus is on, whoever's talking, or like whatever class I'm going to.
Yeah.
But then I'm wiggling my foot and I'm doodling, or I'm like fidgeting around with something, because that's what helps me sort of process and think, is that, like, activity and that movement.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm very aware of times also, like, when my ADHD is really bad. Like, I'm hosting this new podcast for Understood. There was a day where the pharmacy ran out of my medication, and it was really hard because it was this really big deal guest. It's a person I respect a lot, and I had to power through this interview, and I was so distracted. I was so just off my game. And so finally I said, I was like, hey, I'm out of my ADHD medication. I'm having a really hard time. And thankfully everyone was very kind and very supportive, and they understood because they've all been there. I have, like, a lot of shame about that. I have a lot of, like...
No, you shouldn't.
Oh, I mean, but it's true though, because it's like, it's so easy to look at somebody with ADHD and be like, oh, they're just, like, fucking around. Oh, they're just not trying hard enough. And it's like, no, I really am excited and proud of this work that I've done into getting this podcast and setting it up. But, like, that was just a day that my ADHD was really bad, and I was so aware of it that I just became more and more aware of it as I kept going, and I started apologizing more and getting more self-conscious, and then I would mess up more. And so it was like a disaster. It was a disaster of an interview, and it was fine. Like, we have an amazing editor, and she did a great job with it. But yeah, like, I'm always very aware of those moments where it's like I'm very scattered, or I'm like, oh my God, like, I've been, like, just now I'm like, I've been talking for a really long time.
Yeah. What I always think, especially since I know more about it, is how do we educate teachers so that they know that, so they don't punish kids that have ADHD or tell their parents they're troublemakers? How do we do that?
That's a really good question. A lot of it is kind of stuff like this, like, there's a lot of people who are doing, oh, don't cry, it's okay. There are a lot of kids who do get told that they're troublemakers or bad kids, or
they have the parent conference with the teacher, and then they say, your kid doesn't want to sit still, and might have to go back a grade, or he needs this, or he needs that, or she needs this. And it's like, they need to have some mandatory training, like what you and I are talking about. They need to know that kind of stuff so they can approach things differently.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. This was a little bit different than what we normally do, but I'm here visiting my mom, and I really wanted to talk to her and use this maybe as, like, an education. So if you like this, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to comment down below if you have thoughts or questions or opinions, or just, want to tell me what you had for breakfast. That's okay too. Mom, what are they supposed to do?
Don't forget, smash the subscribe. What? I have to say smash. Don't forget. Don't forget, smash that subscribe button.
That was really good. Good job. Correct it. From all of us here at Catieosaurus Industries, thank you so much for being here. Remember to eat a snack. Remember to drink some water. Remember to take your meds. Remember to be kind to yourself. Remember to be kind to others. And remember that we love you. See you again soon.